We will go ahead and get started with the September 23rd, 2025 board meeting. Start with a roll call and start with you, Danny.
Danny Nell, Santa Barbara.
Nivelle Long, Durham County.
Karen Howard, Chatham County.
Amy Fowler, Orange County.
Marilyn Carter, Orange County.
Eric Vitale, Durham, TD chair.
Mark Bell, Hillsborough.
Really?
You're fine.
So we're unless you can say that.
Yeah, you can stay there.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah.
It's a cozy environment.
Go ahead, Melissa. Melissa McCullough, town of Chapel Hill.
Sally Green, Dutch Bible.
And our ethics reminder is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. If any member has a known conflict with respect to any matters coming before the board, please identify the conflict and refrain from discussion of that particular matter. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Madam Chair, there is an adjustment. I would politely request that the board add a budget amendment that I have handed out information regarding to the consent under the new item 8A. Just as background, this increases the budget assigned to Triangle West within CPRC by about $1 million based on additional funding we've received, including the allocation of this year's 5303 program and the award of the project prioritization pilot program, which we are being under a federal grant agreement now. So in advance of Central Pines resolution to amend their budget ordinance tomorrow, they asked us to make sure we approve this here at our meeting today. So that's the reason for the change. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? I'm sorry, wait.
I think we may have some people from the public here today.
We do, but they have not signed up to speak. They're here to listen.
Okay. All right. Is there a
As of
motion
now.
to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mhm. Anything?
What item? We're on CTP.
Action item NTP preferred option.
Sorry.
Oh, actually. Our first is the 2055 MT3 preferred option. And
Good morning. So we do not have a presentation for the preferred option today. This is our opportunity for the public hearing because we are in the middle of our comment period for the CTP preferred option. We have received 4 public comments as of right now, most of them related to different transit routes, several related to connecting in with Chapel Hill all the way to Raleigh. We're in the process of evaluating those and we'll incorporate them into the alternatives announced or the preferred alternative that we're working on. But at this point, I think what we'll do is we'll need an action to open the public hearing. And if there's anyone who's here to speak, either online or in person, this is their opportunity.
we will hold it open. Is there a motion
to open?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, so the public hearing is actually open. And would they have had to sign up for?
Not necessarily.
So
We did not receive any signups in advance, but if there's someone,
if there's anyone here or online who wanted to speak in the public hearing, now is an opportunity.
I believe we have someone here. If you could go to the lectern, please. Sure.
Good morning. Joe Milazzo, Executive Director of the Regional Transportation Alliance, voice of the business community on transportation, the Metropolitan Triangle. We have just a few comments. One is to applaud Triangle West for having the opportunity to speak and the opportunity to engage in a good ongoing process about multimodal transportation. As you know, the business community has been very supportive of all the modes, focused in particular on the FAST study, freeway, arterial, street, and tactical-based transit study. I want to encourage that inclusion of some of those specific projects in there and those priorities in the preferred option and the other work that's happening going forward, including things that you've seen such as BRT on Interstate 40, a proposed exchange station for regional transit, and making sure there's sufficient capacity, multimodal capacity along our freeway and major arterials. Our comments.
Have anyone online who's indicated that they'd like to speak?
Our next item is.
Move to close the public.
I think we were gonna leave it open or were we gonna close it?
You can close it
Oh, okay.
and then start the rest of the meeting.
Well, is there a motion to close the public hearing? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Our public comment period is open through October 11th. So we will continue to receive comments during that time and we'll present to you what we've heard at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Item 10, the draft fiscal year 27 Unified Planning and Work Program released for public comment, and Thomas Porter is here to present that.
Everybody, my name is Tom Porter. I'm a transportation planner at Triangle West. And I'm going to be talking about our FY27 Unified Planning Work Program. Okay, so let's start here. So we're talking about kind of, not ready for that yet.
It's a great one.
We need to be prepared for that, GIF. So yeah, one thing I do want to emphasize before I start that this is very much a living document, looking for your feedback. Of course, we asked for the TCs a couple of weeks ago. And then after today, hopefully beginning our public comment period. So yeah, looking for some feedback. Yeah, and if you have questions, feel free to jump in along the way. Or at the end if you want to hold them, but that's up to you. So start with the basics. What is, oh, it's gonna work.
Right again.
There we go. All right. So what is the Unified Planning Work Program? It's a lot of words that don't maybe mean a lot altogether. So yeah, what does this mean? So the Unified Planning Work Program is Triangle West annual budget and funding document. While this is something we might do for fun, this is something that we are also required to do by federal regulation. And it's something that defines the TPO's planning priorities and describes all federally funded transportation related planning activities within a program year. So in this case, FY27. Funding for this comes from federal highway and FTA. And to use that funding, it's matched by state and local sources. So funds for this are distributed and apportioned by population to MPOs. There's kind of two big umbrellas, if you will, of funding: our federal highway funding and our FTA funding. So the biggest of these is our STVGDA. It's kind of difficult to say altogether. This stands for Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, direct attributable. In the vernacular, this is just going to get referred to as DA funds. These are flexible funds, and so DA funding can be used for consultant studies, planning infrastructure, so roadways, sidewalks, transit service, stuff like that. There are very few restrictions on DA funds, so long as its use is transportation related. And so these are available for MPO staff and member planning studies, and to use these funds, a 20% match is required. 20% local match is required. The second big bucket of funds under this umbrella, to mix metaphors, is our metropolitan planning. So these referred to usually as PL funds. These are available to MPO staff for planning purposes. And it also requires a 20% local match. Finally, our third bucket, safe and accessible transportation options, referred to often as 5410. This is money available to MPO staff for planning related to complete streets. And for this, there is no local match required, 100% federally reimbursed. And then moving right along to our FTA funding. One kind of bucket here are 5303 funds. These are available for MPO staff and member planning studies. And again, to use these funds, a 20% local match is required. So where are we in developing the FY27 UPWP? We're moving right along here. And so we, of course, today being September 23rd, the draft UPWP is in front of the board and we'll be seeking a release for public comment at the end of this presentation, but it's been before the TC, had a walkthrough before that for our TC members, and also kind of worked with our members to find or to discuss special studies. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. So special studies for FY27. So these are new special studies that'll be included in this UPWP. And so as of right now, there are 4. The first of which being the extra regional MTIP database and web application. And so I'll just briefly kind of try to give you the bullet points of what each of these are.
I'm sorry to stop you, but the last one will not come out of this funding, so you only have to do the first.
Saving time. Get out a little early then. So our MTIP database and web application. So this here is a joint initiative with Campo to create a unified database to contain planned projects for every transportation mode. That data is going to support the Triangle Regional Model, the Joint MTP, project programming and analysis in general. The second of our 3 studies, the NC54 study. And so this study will be a corridor study for a segment of NC54 in Research Triangle Park. That study will include a safety and multimodal analysis on that corridor, which includes Research Triangle High School and Park Office Drive. The idea here that the study will create a long-range vision for that corridor, incorporating plans for the future RTP mobility hub and future BRT line.
I just have a question. What about the passenger rail stop here as well? That's something that we just approved for that to be looked at. Durham County, I think Durham City, didn't you also?
So, yeah.
We're advancing this out, we're advancing that out of 26 funding. So we'll be proposing an amendment. This is for 27.
Okay, but you mentioned the multimodal hub. You didn't mention the passenger rail as a part of that.
As part of the NC54 study,
Mhm.
we will capture that. The multimodal hub, we're generically including passenger.
Okay, because they're gonna be 2 separate. The rail stop, the passenger rail stop will be separate from the multimodal hub.
It's separate, but on the same property.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure we
We'll
weren't
make-
leaving that out. Okay, thank you.
And then, yeah, last in this case will be the Joint Regional Trail Plan. And so the focus of this will be to inventory, map, and identify a regional trails network in the 15 county Triangle region. And this comes kind of on the, or comes after the Triangle Trails Initiative completed a strategic plan in which they identified the development of a regional trail network and a master plan as a top priority. So this follows on the heels of that. That's what's new for 27. We will have some carryover from past UPWPs, so from 25 and 26. From 26, we anticipate the UNC Cogen Rail Corridor Feasibility Study carrying on. I think this is the subject of the most recent amendment to FY26. And then from 25, the US 70 East Corridor Study, Phase 2, will continue, as will the 15501 Corridor Study.
I have a question.
Yes.
The 15501 corridor study, where does it start and end on 15?
I'm not I'm not sure. I'm not managing that study, but I can certainly find out.
We have consulted with all of the partners and jurisdictions. I don't know that we've quite identified the boundaries yet, but conceivably it'll be, I don't think we're going to go east of the 15501 bypass by the former South Square. I'm really dating myself here. And I'm not quite sure where in the western edge we've picked the terminus, but we will define that in partnership with the county to down in Division 7.
So related to the 25 studies, do we have a time and an end date for those? Is there a timeline?
That was my question. Yeah. When will we complete those? Yeah.
We are kicking off after a very long and tumultuous procurement process, the US 70 East Corridor study next week. So I think we'll be able to dial in the end of that timing. We've not picked the exact time to begin the 15501 corridor study. I think we could probably commit to get you an update on the next meeting.
It feels like they've been going on forever.
Yeah. What's the holdup on 15501?
It's a bigger, more complicated process. Honestly, we wanted to make sure we had US 70 teed up because a lot of the same steps we will take as part of US 70, we want to apply to 15501. We've gone back and forth with an incredible amount of dialogue between the Transportation Planning Division at NCDOT and the Feasibility Studies Unit at NCDOT to figure out the exact technical process that'll be followed. And that was the months-long delay in getting it under agreement. So I think now that we understand better what they're looking at, we can transfer that to 15501 and advance that into procurements.
All right, one follow-up on the regional trail study. Is CAMPO involved with that?
I think they are, yeah.
Potentially they would.
Okay.
And that would be part of a broader region extending outside of just our planning area or Campo's planning area, but conceivably could be a partnership across all of the 15 counties that the Triangle Trails Initiative is working on. This is part of supporting that.
I mean, that's really exciting. We've never done anything like that with other NPOs. That's really cool.
With NPOs, RPOs.
MPOs, yeah, exactly. Think about that leading to other things. Yeah.
Well, and back to those two studies that are carrying over. Can we get an update in the next meeting on that, just to make sure we're keeping a real sort of focus on that one?
For sure.
So moving right along, we're going to talk about some of the major changes going to the FY27 UPWP. And so the first of which is our task codes are changing. And so if you've ever had the pleasure of looking at our budget lines, you've probably seen this before. I think some of the things here probably describe the work that we do, and some of the things here could probably be improved upon, describe the work we do. And so, yeah, I think some of this is somewhat opaque. And so our task codes in FY27, we changing from this to that. And so I'll run through these real quick, but the idea here is that these are much more straightforward in design than what we previously had. The first major category are required functions. This is stuff, of course, we're required to do, like the UPWP we're talking about today, the MPP, SPOT, things like this are going to be under that required functions heading. Our second major one, strengthening partnerships. So we have two subcategories: supporting local decision making and targeted studies. This is where our work that supports our members will go. Our budgeting, I should say, will go there, as well as special studies, things like this. Our third, legislative dialogue. Here we have categories for national and statewide engagement. These categories is where our budgeting for engagement at those levels will take place. Fourth, our community education and attainment. This is where a lot of the outreach, public engagement, things like this will be kept. Fifth, resiliency. This refers to organization resiliency. As opposed to maybe a more environmental connotation. So this is about making sure that the organization and staff are in a place where they can, right, be resilient, respond to the needs of members of the organization, regardless of what might be happening elsewhere, other government, what have you. And then finally, infrastructure stewardship. This is about being a good steward of our backend stuff, our data, GIS kind of things, as well as doing project development in a concise and efficient way.
I have a question
Yes.
about the heading on number 4, community education and attainment. What's the idea of that's being attained?
I think we'll
An
find that.
English major question, sorry.
I think we'll find that better presented, because these 6 descriptions, the categories are going to be, the same 6 categories that are in our proposed strategic plan.
Yeah,
And there's a broader definition of that when we get to that.
okay.
Can I ask, where would, like compliance with Title IX go?
Other required functions.
Those are our TPOs. Moving right along, one other major proposed change would be the creation of a funding reserve. And so starting in FY 27, the TPO will request an additional 2% of the gross budget, the idea of achieving 6 main goals. So I'll talk through those goals briefly. First of which being financial stability and sustainability. And so having a reserve will allow the TPO to manage their finances long-term. This prevents a reliance on short-term borrowing for unexpected member contributions to cover increased costs. Second being emergency response. And so funds would provide a crucial financial cushion to handle unforeseen events, whether that be natural disasters, infrastructure failures, whatever crises you might be able to imagine. Third, help with cash flow management. And so just help manage daily cash requirements, smooth out the impact of cash flows throughout the year to keep operations running smoothly. Service level protection. And so adequate reserves help the TPO maintain consistent service levels for residents, regardless of whatever the economy is doing or revenue shortfalls or anything like that. Would improve the TPO's credit rating. And so agencies view cash reserves as an indicator of financial stability and the ability to manage economic uncertainties. And so this would lead to better borrowing terms should Triangle West need to do something like that. And finally, what we're calling intergenerational equity. And so the idea here is that by saving now, TPO can finance future liabilities, projects, ensuring costs that are not or will not be entirely borne by the future TPO, if you will. Yes.
A couple of questions here. Where does 2% come from as the target here?
It was a starting point to discuss this. I think the really critical part that we are establishing that the funds that we have that are unassigned are a reserve, whether it's less or more than 2%, or, you know, if now's not the right time to start it, that it's something we work towards. But we do have carryover unassigned funds and beginning to acknowledge it as a reserve and putting policies in place for when to use those funds and how to use them and then how to replenish them, work on a goal for them is really the crux of this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a smart goal, set of goals. Do we have like a medium term? Do we envision this 2% annual? Do we envision it like what? I guess like I'm hearing that we're not positive that that's like the final endpoint. But do we see dramatic change over this need over the next couple of budget cycles as likely?
Again, not necessarily. The 2%, I mean, I did discuss with some staff at different agencies about 2% being an effective number that was somewhat reasonable and not necessarily oppressive to the concept. But once we get kind of into that recommended LGC, local government commission, stabilized space of funding, I don't think we would continue to collect a surcharge.
That was gonna be my ask, how long are you planning to do that? Because if you did it indefinitely, you'd be building a giant fund reserve.
No, our goal is to have, and this is a great example. Our quarter 3 billing, through no fault of ours, was kicked out at NCDOT, and internally, they have not processed it yet. Received assurances, it's nothing we have done, was an issue for them. So quarter 3 has not been paid from last year. Quarter 4 also has not been paid, and we're getting ready to present quarter 1 at the close of the quarter for reimbursement. So that puts us more than $3 million out of, the generosity of Central Pines is what's allowing us to float that. And that also is impacting their other programs. So we want to make sure that ideally we'd like to have 6 months of reserve, maybe a little more, 3 months of that liquid so we can leverage it. But again, that would be part of a policy that would come back to this board.
You know, I agree with Danny. I think it's wise to have a reserve policy. And I appreciate Central Pines being willing to float that. I think the city of Durham before was doing the same thing to support the TPO or the MPO back then. I just want to make sure we're clear. So this request is coming under the UPWP conversation, but this is for the gross budget for the entire TPO, right?
Right.
You're just putting it here as a sort of a place to have this discussion, or?
Right. Ideally, we would like our UPWP to be more of a comprehensive document that includes not just our federal funding, but also the other programs we're involved in, and how we assign local funds that aren't used for match. I think that would be a best practice because right now it doesn't tell the whole story. So that's why we're trying to introduce it into this conversation and make it be more. Also, one thing that has not happened routinely for this board is regular financial reporting. We want to make sure we get to a system where we are presenting, I'm thinking at least quarterly, if not monthly, a status of all our ins and outs.
So it sounds to me like it's the equivalent of what we use in the local government as a fund balance. And so it seems like we're not talking about taking 2% out of every year's budget necessarily. We're talking about having a standing amount of 2% in a fund that we would take in and out. No, you're talking about taking in 2% every year?
2% or a percentage as determined.
Right. Okay.
And I was gonna add on to that I think we should have a policy that, you know, your goal is to achieve a certain specific fund balance, you know, whether it's 6 months of reserve, so you can have like, don't have cash flow issues or whatnot, but I think we should set some policy to.
Yeah. Because we do that. I mean, that's what we do.
Local
in the
government
local
does that.
government. Yeah. And so.
And right now, we're finalizing our numbers from the fiscal year 25. Sorry, I'm used to a different fiscal year and it's still catching up. So for example, our current reserve, I'm estimating to be between 600,000 and 700,000. So we are also accumulating unassigned reserve as things like projects, planning studies are extended out. We're not double collecting the match, but there is an accumulation of funds. You know, we have a staffing vacancy. We're not spending that money until the staffing is filled. We may defer significant purchases or decide we don't need them anymore. That's still going into fund balance, the reserve. So the surcharge is not the only way that we will accumulate funding into the reserve.
Can I recommend that we call it a fund balance since that's what we all use as language?
Sure. Great suggestion.
Just a quick question about, the billings that haven't been paid. How is the TPO addressing those with their DOT?
Regular. Again, you know, this is not even something that I can go to the person and address individually. It is some departmental dynamics at DOT. So, you know, when I ask, is there anyone I can contact specifically to encourage them to address this as fast as possible? The response often is, we don't know exactly who does that. And it's in a different division, so we can't tell you. But the people that we regularly interact with, I don't know if Julie Bogle is on the call, but her team, they are very responsive. When we bring up concerns, it generally goes outside their hands.
Is this a new occurrence? Has this happened before?
Yes, and it's not, we're not the only ones that it's affecting in the case of Q3. It's affecting other NPOs.
One last thing, so I support this, but given the discussion about what we're gonna do and sort of like how much it is, I think it'd be good to have a written policy about this that we adopt, so can we do that?
We will do that in concert with the proposed UPWP adoption after. I'll have that prepared for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and related to policy, I would suggest looking at like what the local government commission recommends around this issue. I know like Durham County we have policies around this. I'm sure everybody does. So looking at kind of what are the best practices around that.
We absolutely want to follow the LGC recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, just for now, 2% we think year one gets us there ballpark.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, so the build that reserve would be a significant upfront. We're trying to make it very incremental, so it's little impact as possible. So if there is feedback that, hey, 2% is not realistic in this budget year, come up with something less, that's great. We will absolutely follow that direction and propose what all of our members can reasonably absorb.
Speaking just for myself, 2% seems perfectly reasonable. You know, like within the number itself doesn't trouble. I just the sort of sense of proportion to the overall goal, I think would be helpful when we get to the adoption, just for a sense of like the roadmap to the balance that we want to get to.
Back to Amy's point.
2% will be roughly around $100,000.
Okay.
Total.
So we're looking at several years of this kind of commitment.
Right. This will be a slog.
Okay, yeah, great. That's very helpful. I mean, and again, I think 2%, that strikes me as reasonable. Just kind of want to understand the roadmap. Thank you.
So tied up in all this, of course, is the member match. And so obviously seeking your input today and after this public input. And so once we've been able to, of course, hear from you guys, as well as the public at that point, be able to put together a member match amount and be able to show that to everybody here. And that, of course, will include the 2% I've been talking about here for the last little while.
We, Tom and I we've already had some changes based on input from the TC meeting. Our goal is to try to keep the ask for member contributions for our matches around where they're at. We appreciate that we are not the only ones facing challenges and uncertainty, particularly in a federal funding environment that is very fluid. And we do not want to make promises or commitments both to the board or to the other things we need to do that we cannot accomplish with the available resources we have. Later on in this meeting, you'll hear a presentation of the organizational assessment that does include adding staff in some particular ways. We will, of course, try to phase that in over time. And as the environment, we expect to remain dynamic as that environment changes. So please don't think that anything you're seeing is the idea that we are going to ramp up very quickly and without intention. This is a visionary process starting with the 27 program.
And this slide covers the pro rata share for the individual members, but so we're adding, you're proposing adding 15,000 in the coming year to that reserve.
To the fund balance.
Yeah, isn't that the 15,000 there?
Oh, no, the 15,000 is something we've been collecting. And you know, that is maybe something up and negotiable. We have expenses such as food for meetings, which is a very obvious one, that are not eligible for federal reimbursement. But we find that that is something that generally increases participation of our functions. So we have collected $15,000. This will be the third year we've asked for it.
Only separate. So there's that 2%, where's that's built into our.
It would be added on to this. This is from last year.
Yeah, not currently reflected.
Yeah.
So, but it would actually not just be 1.02 times what we see there, because this is last year's budget, not this year's budget, right? So there might be an increase just due to the budget plus an extra 2%.
Right, and this table is the non-federal portion, the match that the members provide. This is not a total budget table.
Yes,
We
but it's
actually,
from last year.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good point. I don't know that we'll need to keep that additional $15,000. So let's see where we're at and where we are in collected. I'm not one to want to continue to take money that we aren't putting to good use.
They just get more premium snacks though.
So, you know, for example, I think I haven't determined whether it's eligible or not yet. We need to figure that out because they've arrived. For our safety summit, we have books coming for all the attendees. You know, so things like that. You know,
It's not a cinnamon roll, but I'll take it.
if cinnamon rolls will help, then we will have them.
Yes, I'm wasting our time. Thank you.
Premium cinnamon rolls.
Thank you.
Wait, yeah, I had said two follow-up questions. One, I did want to note, you know, I don't, just because, you know, this does go out for the public, that the narrative around the 54 study, it does not, it mentions bus, it does not mention rail. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in the narrative. And then I have a question around the 2026 special studies, the UNC Cogen Rail Corridor Feasibility Study. I just want to raise the issue, you know, we had our passenger rail working group subcommittee meeting, I guess about a week or so ago. And, you know, the question came up of, you know, that is one of the proposed places that there could be passenger rail in the future. And I know this is to study really turning that line into a pedestrian greenway, whatever. So I just want to note at that, and I didn't know how that fits into whatever, but yes.
I did notice that. Thank you, Wendy, for bringing that up. I've been involved in these discussions, and for honestly decades, the community has been trying to put pressure on UNC to get out of coal and to commit to some other kind of more sustainable energy. And you see where that's gotten us in 25 years. The genius, in my view, of what's being proposed, which is to turn that the rail line that now really only exists to transfer coal to UNC into a trail, is that allows for that whole corridor, that whole rail corridor going down into Carborough to be available for within Carborough redevelopment for housing and for, all the kinds of smart growth things that we like to talk about. And it goes through Carolina North. It will have solved the problem that we had earlier with Carolina North that professors raised of, well, this campus is disconnected to the main campus. Why isn't there a way we can at least get our bicycles down there? This would allow that. It also allows, and then the extra benefits of having this wonderful paved American Tobacco Trail like facility going all the way up to Orange County. That is what let me back up and say that when basically Greg Meyer got involved and started having conversations at a high level with UNC, they said, oh, we like this idea. And so instead of saying bad UNC, get off of coal, it was, if you get off of coal, see what you can do for the community, for your own community and for the community. So that is what the objective is.
I just want to raise it because when you're looking at maps and you see like a passenger rail station in Carrboro, then obviously this is making a decision that no, there won't be passenger rail going to Carrboro.
I hope not.
So,
but that is a good point because it is on the map. I don't think
yeah,
it should be
I just, again, it was in the discussion with the group, right?
Yes, I was going to say that. And so I actually looked it up, where when you look at this feasibility study, it actually says with or without rail.
It references
It's
that.
actually passenger rail, but it's.
Some kind of transit, yeah.
So it does, they are including the possibility of including some sort of transit plus the bike path.
I understand. I'm just gonna stop there. I think there is an idea of having a feasibility study and then it not being feasible.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Great. The TC recommended the board release the 27 draft UPWP for public comment on September 9th. And today, the TPO is seeking that the 27 draft UPWP be authorized for release for public comment.
All right. So is there were there more questions from the board? Is there a motion to release the
So
draft?
moved.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
The item 11, 8.0 project list approval and Bill Bond.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Akam Satin, the planner at Triangle West. I'll be talking about an update to our spot list. Just start with a bit of background on the spot process. So in total, we will have 17 projects per node to submit. This is down from the 24 projects that we had last cycle. But one thing that's remaining the same is the amount of local input points we'll be able to assign. And this is a process that'll occur early next year. As far as the type of projects, there are two main types: the new and Holden Tank projects and the carryover projects. The carryover projects are ones that were awarded funding last cycle, but they still are just for funding for preliminary engineering. They do not count towards our 17 submittal spots. It's just new Holden Tank projects that take up those submissions. And one of the main takeaways we just wanted to stress is just the amount of funding that we have for this round. It's very limited, even though we did see some success last go around. It's good not keep hopes too high. Going to the type of projects you will see. So the process covers all modes, but within this Triangle West area, we have 4 out of the 6 modes. So we don't have any aviation or ferry eligible projects in this area. So there's just bike ped, highway, transit, and the rail. And these are divided into three categories: statewide, regional, and division needs, kind of depending on the area of impact for each project. Going into the project list, just want to preface it that it's going to be displayed differently than it was before. In past, it was list separated by mode. But right now I've separated it by the division and region. And so just kind of use a blurry map, but zoomed in on the area just to show all the areas and divisions that we are in, regions 7, 5, and 8, and then regions C, D, and E. And so starting with the division level, I'm not going to read all these, going to let you intake these, but at the top is the amount of available funding that we received from NCDOT at the beginning of July. And so at this point, it's probably reduced a bit already. But the green projects that you will see are bike and ped projects. And then any blue ones will be highway projects. And so these are all within Division 5 and at the division level. And continuing with these two highway, and the purple will represent transit projects. Onto Division 7, same deal, color-coded by the mode, and funding availability is at the top for Division 7. So these are all the bike and ped projects within Division 7 that are currently being submitted. And then also within Division 7 is these three highway projects and these two transit projects. Just at the division level. So the more local projects. The next level up would be at the regional level. And so Region C consists of Divisions 5 and 6. And that here's funding availability for this region. These are projects that have a larger impact area and often cross county borders. And so red projects you'll see are the rail project. And so with this being mostly larger projects, some more transit projects, as well as more rail projects. And on the other side, and Region D consists of Divisions 7 and 9. Here are the projects for that region. And then lastly is the statewide level. So all projects in the state will compete for this pot of funding here. And as far as the projects we'll be submitting, all rail projects are the only ones eligible. So these list all the projects that will be submitting at the statewide level.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I seem to be the only one talking. Would you please go 2 slides back? No, okay, one forward. Here we still have a BRT from Carborough to Nevin, and that, I think that was explained somehow. Didn't we talk about that?
There's some questions on the project details, but
Yeah.
it's a very conceptual stage. So we want to.
It's actually a combination of projects that are submitted under the division tier. So it'll include the alignment of North-South BRT to try to leverage state money awarded through SPOT through that project, because it will likely not receive division level funding, even though we all believe in the value of the project. So in essence, it will end the Hillsborough Transfer Center. So we can collect those projects that individually won't get division funding, because division funding is probably going to be very thin on this round.
Right.
We get to regional funding and try to pick up something there, so that
But I think Michael raised the point last time, is that what would be the benefit of BRT on a route like that, which would be significantly better than an express bus?
So in Spot, we're submitting it as a BRT because that has the highest likelihood to get funded. The transit part of that will not, it would not say take the north-south BRT service and extend it as is with the headways all the way through, because that would be a lot of buses to an area that is not going to need them.
Yep, right.
So there may be portions of the corridor that are operating as local only bus, as express bus, as higher frequency that's not BRT. So it's just, we're starting with BRT rather than just saying bus service.
Okay.
And that project in particular, we've also worked with the Burlington Graham NPO, and they are on board with submitting that.
So moving on from the projects that we submitted is the projects submitted by others that are still within Triangle West area. So these are ones that we coordinated with Bertar RPO, Ginger Pines RPO, and Campo. So project they also deem a priority for them that happen to lie partially in our area. Can you take these as well?
I'd really like to commend Phil on coordinating all of the discussions with our partners to generate this list. Each project takes a lot of understanding and commitment, and we are working with partners in every direction around our planning area to get this list together. Thank you.
In Central Pines RPO, is that Triangle West or is that something else?
No, it is a separate planning organization.
That's got it. Okay.
Okay, sorry. About the Central Pine, the one on Old 86, and clearly that is a road, that's a stretch that needs some help, but what it really needs is bike lanes. And my understanding for years has been that it's difficult to get bike lanes when you're not going from what's considered a destination to another destination. I'd just like to ask about, is there ever any possibility of getting bike lanes on Old 86 there?
I can't say for sure, but what I can say is that we can consider this to have an express design being done on the area. As part of this process in P9, express designs will be required for some higher projects like this. And so we definitely look into it more in the process.
That's a route I travel frequently, and it is a very popular bicycle corridor.
And the modernization does propose upgraded shoulders to 5. There could be some sort of designation there.
Yeah.
And certainly, thank you for bringing that up, because let's say that modernization also includes edge line rumble strips. We would want to make sure that they're laid out in a pattern that are conducive to biking.
Yeah.
Because not everybody likes bicycling on rumble strips.
I know.
So like I said, here are the bike pad, highway, and rail projects. The next one is the next 2 slides are transit projects. So this is where we saw the most success in P7. And so this is where we focus our efforts on. Moving on with some additional transit projects. Now in this next section, we will talk about the area specific weights. So these are the criteria for how projects are scored across the modes. We'll mainly be talking about the highway mode because for all other modes, they're rating the same as with P7. Criteria are not changing. Except for the ferry mode, which we don't have any in this area, at least not yet. So for the mobility, highway separated into 2 categories, mobility and modernization. And this one will actually be staying the same as P7. The main changes that impact us will be in the modernization. And so we see here for the different weights, criteria, safety, rate, and then shoulder width and pavement condition was combined to kind of create a new category called lane width. And so on the left shows the weights in P7, and on the right shows what they were modified to and P8. One big change that's want to bring up is just to this safety weight. Opened up from 20 to 35% is a pretty big bump, and we ourselves over the past couple of years have been working to modify the weights to increase safety as well. So this works in our favor.
This may be tangential or not in the right place, but since emissions reductions is one of the goals of our evaluations, and it might just be ours, it might not be FWA's, but it seems to me there ought to be criteria for emission reductions. Well,
So while it may not be in the state, within our personal process, I know and how we assign local input points, that is a part of the process.
you just need to convince them.
Yes.
That's how I So even with the changes here, we did attempt to modify even further. Here shows the potential changes that we were advocating for, just at the division level. Now, this does require the coordination agreement of all affected parties. And so within Division 5, it would be in agreement with us, the Division 5 engineers, Campo, and with Cartar RPO. In Division 7 on the side, a couple more people to coordinate with. Then there's Greensboro MPO, Burlington MPO, High Point MPO, Piedmont Triad RPO, and Jim Pines RPO. So a lot more coordinated within Division 7, which is ultimately why the conversation didn't move forward in Division 7. Ultimately, I decided that the weights that would change here, just want to see how it will play out before modifying it again ultimately. So within Division 7, these will be remaining the same. Within Division 5, we're still in discussion, but we may potentially be moving the weight from freight and adding it to safety just to increase it even more. And lastly, just showing where we are in the schedule at the star. So we're at the end of the submission period. Next week is our deadline for getting these projects into spot online. And that's when they'll go into data review, a long process that requires multiple levels of review the spot office does. So happy to take any questions.
Just to be clear, so on the project submissions you listed before, so are those like ranked by score? Those have all been scored, right? And were those ranked by scores?
The scores will only be from P7. So they haven't been scored yet. So we have a general idea, but not exactly just because they're scaled against each other. So it depends on what's
Okay,
being
so
submitted.
they're in no particular order right now.
In the presentation, no.
No other questions? Is there a motion to approve the candidate project list and the proposed alterations to the area specific weights?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? And the tip update number 1.
It will be for penetration improvement program. We just call it TIP for short. So getting to a little background on it, what is TIP? It is a 10-year document that holds the details on the funding and schedules for all active projects, as well as some projects that are planned. It is fiscally constrained, so only projects with identified funding has been confirmed is put into it. And then amendments, which we're getting into here, so just changes to this DIP. Just with project changes or changes to funding, that happens all the time, and so it requires amendments in order for the document to stay updated. So you may have noticed there are two amendments on the agenda today. On the consent, there is the accelerated amendment number one, and then on action, there is our regular amendment number one. So the need for this came from just recognizing that CIP amendment process is a very lengthy process. At times takes half a year just to update a project change in the document. And so we needed to find a way to shorten that spending time just for emergency situations. Earlier this year in the public participation plan, include a clause at the end that allowed procedures for emergency situations, just when we need to get something approved in a step fast. And so accelerated amendments are the mechanism that we'll be kind of cradling those with. They'll be approved in the same month they are brought forward, and so they will not go for a month for public comment, and that's be directly approved that month. And they will run concurrently with regular amendments that will go through a normal public comment period schedule. So on this first accelerated amendment, the two projects that required us to initiate this were Exchange Park Lane project in Hillsborough and the Durham Rail Trail over in Durham. Both projects are expected to be led early next year. And so there require additional funds, just kind of get them over that finish line. In addition to these are the item handout for July, August, and September. Normally these would go in a regular amendment, but we received a request to prioritize adopting these two projects here. They need to be adopted at the statewide for multiple MPOs. And so we received a request to fast track the approval of these by NCDOT. Our regular amendment that we go into public comment. So two new projects that you see there are for the Central Durham BRT. Now that study has been going on for a while, just getting those funds programmed into the STIP, as well as the Village Mobility Hub, just for an award that the City of Durham won. As far as project updates, there's additional funding for the Mission project, as well as more buses for Go Triangle. And then modifying the cost details and schedules for the NSBRT and the capital portion of the work we complete. Just making sure that the years listed are up to date. And so here is a schedule for these two amendments. Like I mentioned, the accelerated amendment will be approved today, this month, and the regular amendment will be approved in November after going through public comment throughout October. And so with this, happy to take any questions.
I just want to clarify on the new projects, the Central Durham BRT, the Village Mobility Hub, looking at the kind of more detailed information about it. Are we just moving already allocated funding forward in the budget?
So for these two projects, they're the new sources of funding that have not been put into the STIP yet. And so just something that's required by FTA and FHWA, just in terms of helping them track things, it is being put into the STIP.
We're not taking away from funding something else to add.
Right, it's not from our funds.
Okay, and the source is from somewhere out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so STIP is for all funds, not just MPO direct attributable funds.
Process question. So I know, I'm sorry I got here late. I know there was an item on the consent agenda that was also a tip amendment. So between that and this one.
So
Yeah, that was the accelerated amendment number one, and then we have amendments. So the accelerated amendment was on consent. That this was just explaining.
Main difference is processing time. Accelerated amendment will just take 1 month, and approved within the same month, for planning emergencies, as approved by our director. And then the regular amendment will go through our normal, cycle of English public comment 1 month. Such.
I'm sorry, I know I just asked this, but I just want to clarify. The local match that's reflected for those projects, I'm just trying to understand, is that supposed to be coming from the Durham County Transit Plan, or is it from another source?
The two new projects.
Yeah. Yeah, because Ellen is out of town this week, so we were not able to be briefed beforehand. We usually are before the meetings. by her, so that's what I'm trying to understand.
I'm
I'm looking at this, your more detailed information about that.
Yeah, so I'll need to look back at the applications, where they identify the source, but usually it's either city funds or transit plan funds.
right. I'm not certain of the details whether the city will ask the transit plan to reimburse the non-federal portions.
Okay.
But they may.
Okay, well, I just, yeah, we have not had conversations about that, so I just.
Yeah, ideally, the city, well, with the persistent poverty area where the city has already provided certification to, in their application, that they have the non-federal portion, and we're assuming that the city is also pledging the non-federal portion of the 5307 program, regardless of whether they ask for reimbursement.
Okay.
This Ellen and Sean, they gotta get together on this one, right?
What, I'm sorry?
Ellen and Sean need to get together on that, right?
Yeah, I just don't know, because I just don't think it should be assumed. It should be something that is jointly funded, not just relying on the transit plan.
Because it does say previously authorized funds, but I don't.
It's just not clear.
Because
When
transit
that was
project,
previously
yeah.
authorized.
Right, but all transit projects are not just funded by the county.
Right, so there's a staff thing, yeah.
Yeah, they're supposed to be jointly funded.
Well, yeah.
If I
You
recall,
have the transit fund, so
they have started working out the detail.
Yeah.
I think they're both aware of this.
So a question about the emergency amendment process. There must be a policy that isn't referred to when doing these amendments to see if they qualify for this fast track. Is that how it works?
Dependent on direction of our director, because with planning situations, it is often case by case scenario. So it's within our public participation plan that was preloaded this year. Towards the end is a clause, and the only qualifying factor is just the discretion of our director.
And is there a connection with this process with some of the recent Chantal damage that many of our counties have experienced, or is that completely separate?
So the recent with
The whole depression Chantal damage.
separate but convenient for that.
So is there a motion to release for public comment?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So this is a release for public comment for 30 days. I am meeting for Francis Transportation Plan Amendment, Massey Chapel Road. Ready, you want and Bill Judge?
Bill Judge with the City of Durham. So it was the June meeting, the board released for public comment, proposed alignment of CPP amendment that will utilize James Ross Road, shifting the current CTP has a alignment connecting to sort of the southern section. Yeah, it's dashed out in red. The recommended request was to move it north to James Ross Road. There was a number of public comments received from various property owners, primarily both those impacted by the James Ross as well as those that are impacted by the current alignment. I think there probably was some confusion over the timing and how the project would be funded with the adoption of the CTP. If it were basically selected to relocate it to James Ross Road, that would not, it was not a funded project. It was not an imminent project. It would just be with future development. But if that property was ever assembled, redeveloped, brought in likely to the city or the county, the road would be improved and that would become the CTP alignment. But however, in recognition of the concerns raised by those property owners about that road running through their property or through the existing right of way, there was additional discussion amongst the applicant, the city, and CDOT about an alternative solution, which would basically just utilize the two existing alignments of Massey Chapel Road that have about the 300-foot offset that the current CTP and proposed amendment we're trying to better address. So at this point, the TC, I believe, recommended that that we just utilize the existing alignment, that both intersections have recently been signalized, seem to be working adequately for the time being. With signalization, we've been able to address most of the queuing. For Llewellyn, who from Kimley Horn, who represented the applicant, may be able to provide some additional detail.
Thanks, Bill. Good summary. The one thing I did want to point out, I think there was some confusion from the public about what was being proposed. The comments seemed to reference something that was an imminent construction project and something that would secondarily impact their properties or homes as a result of using the James Ross corridor. When in reality, it's just the CTP alignment. It's not an imminent project. And in fact, what is viewed is James Ross Road would be a 2-lane road that could be constructed within the existing 60-foot right of way. And the reason for this alternative was obviously we have talked about before, the existing CTP alignment that's X'd out is essentially not constructible from a geometric standpoint, a standpoint of impacts to environmental features, which would go through that pond and incur some wetlands impacts further back, as well as it impacts directly several homes through that. And we could look at a sketch of that if we need to. But what we were trying to do is provide an alternative that, in the same way that this solved the offset between the two existing intersections, we were trying to provide a greater separation between the two intersections. And that's why the solution was proposed, presented to the Congestion Management Grant, District Office of DOT, City of Durham, and everyone saw that it operated successfully. That way we have a path forward. Because if my applicant is trying to develop this property here, there's really no way to do that with the corridor going through it. It's not something that he could construct if he wanted to, really. The existing offset is something that has always concerned to some degree the city, but maybe more so NCDOT because of the proximity and future concerns about queue impacts through there. So from the applicant's standpoint, he's perfectly okay with leaving it in the current roadway alignment or using James Ross Road. But what we're hearing, at least from the district office of DOT, maybe not the planning branch, is that there are long-term concerns about the viability of this offset. The last thing we want to do is to have status quo that doesn't allow us to move forward with a rezoning application that would have to protect this corridor or otherwise be in conflict with the CTP and run the risk of being denied. So with that lengthy explanation, I'll see if there's any questions. Yes.
Has a pair of roundabouts been even considered?
The existing intersections, other than signals.
No, but a good question. And the reason why it wasn't, at least in part, is because I'll jump over here. There's a historic church right in this area. And a roundabout, given the size necessary, would impact that property. Good question. Also, on the south side, the same thing sort of exists because you have an existing daycare or preschool, and their circulation is basically built up to the intersection. So it would greatly impact their property and circulation around their property.
Thank you.
I guess you could say it was considered, not analyzed.
Questions?
So we have to either approve or not approve this amendment. So is there a motion to approve the proposed CTP amendment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, motion carried.
Can I clarify, what is the amendment to do? I think
The PC recommended to utilize the existing, it doesn't preclude a James Ross option in the future if that property was developed, but, would not require it.
Okay.
So my understanding is we're approving the alternative alignment, correct?
Of the, I thought we were approving that.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. So the TC recommendation was to basically to utilize the two Massey Chapel in acknowledgement to the public comments from the James Ross. But I think the board has the option of doing either, I guess.
I guess from my perspective, we presented an option and I was out in one of these meetings, so I don't know what the context was. But I don't know if action was ever taken on the alternative to use James Ross Road. If it was, then I understand where we're headed, but I think that needs maybe some clarification.
Yes, because my reading of this was approving the alternative. Yeah. Not
Meaning the
existing
recommended,
alignment.
Meaning the blue line.
That was my reading.
approving that blue line. That's what I thought.
Actually,
What is you, what,
Yeah.
what
right, I want to,
was
Can you
the,
amend it?
yeah, no, I want to go back to staff. So, right. What's staff's, and the TZ recommendation is to amend the CTP with the alternative alignment, which would be the current Massey Chapel offset, correct?
Correct, which.
So it's not, so we're.
It's not the blue, it's not the dotted line, it's,
Right.
yeah.
It's maintaining the present situation,
Maintaining
right?
the present situation.
Okay.
Current street alignment.
That
That
was the
is what
TC.
the amendment is to
Yes.
maintain the current street alignment rather than
In the CTP, yeah.
Yeah,
current
because
street.
now the adopted is the dotted line that takes through.
Yeah, so I wanted to not have the dotted line.
Correct, so TC recommended that rather than move it to James Ross, to just move it to the existing alignment.
Because currently it functions okay at that.
Because it's both signalized, yeah, but
And I know there were objections to the red crosses because I heard from the daycare people, but were there objections to that top blue line?
There were from the property owners along James Ross Road.
Okay,
And that's what I was referring to as I read them and understood them, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought those were primarily related misunderstandings about the imminent nature of a construction project
yeah.
and about the potential impact to those properties without knowing the context that it's only a 2-lane road within the existing right of way.
Wouldn't change their, yeah, so. But if we approve just keeping it as is, we could later change it to approve that.
Yeah.
We could, assuming that, because I mean, even if we weren't here today and the alignment previously utilized James Ross, no one is actively pursuing a project to build that. It would be with development of that James Ross property, which is currently in Durham County. It's not even in the city. So it would have to be, someone would have to come through with a development proposal, either utilizing, city water sewer with annexation or developing it within the county. And likely we would need access to that property anyway.
So just to clarify, we did approve the right thing.
We approved it.
You want to make it explicit in your motion?
yeah,
Carl?
yeah, shall I do that, Chair, just to, so my motion was to approve amendment proposing an alternative alignment for Massey Chapel.
Meaning the blue alignment.
No, the current.
TC recommendation to utilize
TC, that's right, TC recommendation
to utilize the existing.
so the motion was to approve the TC recommendation. Okay.
Request.
To amend the CTP, right, with a.
We need to amend it if that's what.
Well, I think that they put.
Yeah.
Where red X's
Oh,
are.
red X is where it is now.
Where
Okay,
the CTP had it.
got it. Okay.
That's what I understand.
So I think that the motion was right. our understanding of what we were asking for has been clarified.
So that we're essentially the CDP going back to the current alignment.
Yes.
The middle route, not.
Exactly.
We will make sure the minutes reflect that.
I think that's good. Thanks for clarifying.
Basically, we're approving the TC recommendation.
Yes.
Yes.
Just so you know.
Could I ask, and sorry to drag this on, could I ask maybe a procedural question? When my client submits an application for rezoning in this area and does not protect that corridor, if NCDOT does not also adopt the amendment.
Yes. The amendment is not, it's both entities have to.
Right, and so my question is then, would the city deem our application not in compliance with the CTP? And maybe more importantly, would that be a basis for denial of the rezoning or bringing it forward?
I certainly would make myself available to city staff to talk about that.
We'll have to have those conversations with the
And state
city
DOT,
county
right?
planning director.
Because they've got to approve it.
Right.
I did ask local district office if they would be enforcing the protection of this corridor if it stayed the way it was, and they said no, that would be up to the locals.
Right, determine, how the read is of the Unified Development Ordinance.
Okay. Sorry to belabor, just wanted clarification.
Does that clarify? Yeah.
Thank you.
Moving on to informational items, item number 14 is our strategic plan.
Well, Drew and Bo are going to present. I'd like to thank the board and everyone that has contributed to this. The staff has also weighed in quite a bit. We found out a lot about ourselves going through the process. So I'll turn it over to these two accomplished folks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name is Bo Mills. I'm a senior advisor at Fountain Works, which is the firm that worked with you on your strategic planning and organizational assessment. I recently retired from the North Carolina League of Municipalities and was director of the Metro Mayors Coalition at the League of Municipalities beginning of the year. Really fortunate to join my colleague, Drew, who has done the legwork here and has met with Doug on a regular basis throughout the last few months. And I'm really proud of the work that Drew has done. He's a graduate of Wake Forest University and MPA at App State. Has become quite accomplished on transportation. Has a number of clients as a project manager around transportation. He'll be carrying the load for us today and the work around the strategic plan and the organizational assessment. But I just want to quickly sort of set the context for our work here. And as you can see here, the Triangle is one of the fastest growing regions in the United States. I've worked at the national level, and I think it's fair to say that we're in the big leagues now. And our transportation planning is certainly rising to the occasion. And this particular NPO, your little corner of the Triangle, you have certainly played an outsized role in many regards. And this is a statistic that Drew and I were talking about earlier. Since 2020, 5 Triangle counties, I want to get this right, 5 of in the broader region over the last 5-year period have had a growth rate of 56.8%. That's sort of mind-boggling. I think those counties again were like Franklin, Harnett, Chatham, Johnston, and Orange. So you can see that proportional growth is really quite extraordinary. And at the cornerstone of that growth is having a strong transportation system and an infrastructure that are key to accommodating this growth. You all are at the center of working on that, and it's really critical. So what Fountain Works did working with the Triangle West is we first worked on the strategic plan, and the purpose of a strategic plan here was to support Triangle West transition into a proactive and influential leader that delivers innovative transportation solutions. And I'll just, as an aside, I work with MPOs all across the state, and I will tell you that they often look to this MPO to be influential on some of the major policy issues and just providing leadership. So you're punching way above your weight. And that's one thing that's clear in your strategic plan. Obviously, for a strategic plan, you need to articulate your mission, vision, and values as an organization. That was part of the process that we went through with you all. And then outline, and this is really the key, outline the key strategic focus areas to guide the organization's work over the next few years. So that's sort of the big picture, understanding where you are, what your values are, where you want to go. The next thing that we did with you, and this Drew and finished this just recently, an organizational assessment. So an organizational assessment is really about how you support implementation, operationalizing, and really putting the resources around that strategic plan that we worked on with you. And then a part of the organizational assessment is identifying resources, personnel, practices, and efforts needed to achieve the strategic plan's goals. And then the last part of this is gather insights from your staff and interviews and work with your staff, as well as best practices from peer organizations to enhance the Triangle West performance. That peer measures I thought was a particularly helpful process that Drew and Doug worked through. So with that, I'll just sort of stop right there and hand it over. But Doug, I want to do a real quick time check with you, make sure how we are on the schedule. Okay, great. With that, I'll hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Drew. Thank you. I'll stay up here to facilitate the conversation.
Thank you, Bo. My name is Drew Finley, again, Senior Project Manager with Fountain Works. It's been my pleasure to lead and serve as the project manager for both the strategic plan and organizational assessment work. And it's been a real pleasure working with Doug, working with your staff, and hearing from your partners. And so I'm happy to present the strategic plan and organizational assessment. As Bo alluded to, strategic plan is thinking about what do we want to achieve over the next 5 years. So between now and 2030, what are our biggest strategic focus areas as an organization? Then the organizational assessment piece is how are we going to do it and what do we need to do in order to do it effectively? So I will walk through both of those, starting with the strategic plan. And I know that with the member interviews, there are several of you in this room that I interviewed as part of this process. And so that was step 3, but to back up, we started with the member survey that was administered by Central Pines, but had components of asking about Triangle West work. And with each of these phases in the strategic plan process, they built upon each other. So we gathered insights from each phase, used it to inform the next phase of the work. The staff focus groups and staff retreat that we did, particularly with those focus groups, was saying, here's what your members are saying, here's what they want to achieve, what is staff's reactions to that? So then that moved into, after we got insights from staff, we talked to different members. So that's obviously the local governments in your service area. After that, it was the boards. So the technical committee retreat and then the board retreat, which was with you all back in February. And that included strategic elements, but was also talking about how you all work together and a performance evaluation framework for the director being Doug. And with the strategic plan, I'm going to go through the focus areas, and there are 6 of those, but I want to say if there are 3 big words that I think encapsulate the strategic plan as a whole: innovation, equity, and partnerships. You'll see those come up over and over again throughout these different 6 focus areas. So at a high level, the first 2 are about what are our core functions? What are the things that you all are required to do and that you need to do well? First being evaluating the state of infrastructure repair and maintenance. So really what this focus area is about is thinking about how do you all serve as the main entity that helps your partners make data-driven and informed decisions. So thinking about delivering that transparent information to your members, providing them with the data that they need, working with them. Again, you already see the partnerships piece coming into play, monitoring infrastructure to help you and your partners make those informed decisions about, like you heard in the earlier agenda item, what are the biggest projects that we want to submit through the spot process, for example. With focus area number 2, like I mentioned, this is fulfilling your core required functions. So these are the things that you're required to do at the federal and state level. So committing to not only just checking the box, but going above and beyond to make sure that you're infusing innovation into those processes. Like Doug mentioned earlier, the UPWP is the kind of thing that for MPOs and TPOs can be a box checking exercise, but for you all, you want it to be much more than that, and then to be connected and aligned with your strategic focus areas that we have here. Number 3 is strengthening collaboration with partners. So obviously this is where the partnership piece comes into play. You all as a TPO are really unique in the sense that the list of partners that you all work with and have to achieve buy-in from is quite long, and it's quite diverse as well. And so it really takes quite a lot of work to not only strengthen that collaboration, but maintain it and maintain those relationships. So that goes from everything from local governments, municipalities, the economic development community, the contractor community, and other MPOs as well. You all are unique in the sense that you have Campo right next door, you have Burlington Graham. So there are quite a few partnerships that you're working to not only just make sure that you're doing the baseline of communicating with them, but building alignment around your regional strategy, as you all now in your position as Triangle West are, like Bo mentioned, that regional leader for this portion of the Triangle and beyond. Strategic focus area number 4 is about strengthening engagement in legislative dialogue and policy updates. So this gets into both partnerships and innovation. This is something historically that has evolved over time with MPOs and TPOs. And really what this focus area is about is advocacy, but not in any kind of partisan sense, but making sure that both at the state and federal level that you all are advocating for transportation infrastructure support so that you have the funding you need to do the work that you do. So not only just saying that you're going to do that, but as you'll hear about later in the organizational assessment recommendations, having staff that are dedicated to doing that work and to keeping up with those dialogue and updates. So that's number 4. Number 5, this came up a lot, especially with your staff and in the member interviews, how important it is that you all are an organization that reflects and represents the community. You're not just a planning organization that sits behind desks and does work all day. You get out into the community, you host events, you have the upcoming summit, I believe is what it's called, the conference.
The Safety Summit?
Safety Summit, thank you, yeah. So you have events where the public gets to know you, you engage with them, and really with the core message of reaching out to folks who are historically underrepresented communities in the transportation planning process. You all know that history very well of how in previous decades, a lot of transportation planning organizations didn't prioritize those viewpoints enough. And so this is about engaging with the entire community, but particularly those who have been historically underrepresented to give them a voice. So that's the, yeah.
I just wanted to point out because Councilwoman McCullough brought it up. I think the attainment in the previous
Clean Air Act?
session, no, it was, I think it was my error with autocorrect. I was updating that and working with Tom. It should be education.
Oh,
Okay,
got
that was me.
got
Right.
it. Yeah, that was.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. That's great clarification. So that's number 5. Final focus area is around transportation system resiliency. I should have mentioned, I live and work in the town of Boone, North Carolina. We know transportation system resiliency and how important it is very well. When Hurricane Helene came through our area, you all saw it with Chantal as head of, yeah. So it's always been important to prioritize and think about how you can build a transportation system that incorporates emergency preparedness, reactions to natural disasters and climate change. We've seen probably in the past year, because Colleen, and Boone was about a year ago today, how important that resiliency piece is. And as it notes, there are other unforeseen challenges too. The key with resiliency is planning for the unexpected and making the unexpected become something that you can address as much as possible in thinking about transportation system resiliency. So those are your 6 strategic focus areas that came out of that process that I showed earlier of asking your members and your staff and some of you all in the room, what is most important for you? What are those key strategic focus areas that are going to guide you all in your work over the next 5 years? Those are those focus areas. And that leads into what are our values as an organization? You all, when you were known as DCHC, did a lot of strategic planning work. And so this is updating the values based on looking at those focus areas and the things that you all care about the most. What are the values that underpin that? And as you see here, safety, sustainability, economic prosperity, diverse transportation modes, ease of movement, and increased accessibility are those values. And to say a word about each, safety, you all know, is always first priority. Vision Zero plan, things like that. That's pretty self-explanatory. Sustainability, focused on minimizing impacts to the environment through things like emissions. So making sure that you all are a responsible steward of the environment and the work that you do. Economic prosperity, serving as that engine of economic development and realizing that the work you all do is directly connected to the sustainable growth of this region and its economic vitality. Diverse transportation modes, that obviously focuses on providing diverse options for mobility. So things like bike ped, bus rapid transit we heard about earlier, things like that, providing diverse options beyond just cars, the traditional method for transportation. And then ease of movement and increased accessibility. Ease of movement is more about things like reducing congestion, making it easy to get around both in the triangle and beyond. Increased accessibility is recognizing the connection between transportation infrastructure and getting people to the key places that they need to go, whether that's work, education, healthcare. Transportation is not just going along a road, it's going to where you need to go to get the services you need and making those things like education and healthcare more accessible. So those are the values. And excuse me, that is the, values, sorry. Mission and vision that you see here. Mission on the left is, why do you all do what you do? What is the purpose of your work? Well, to equitably advocate for and deliver a transportation system that connects people, promotes economic growth, and drives lasting regional progress. So you see all 3 of the words I mentioned, innovation, partnerships, and equity are reflected in that mission. And then on the other side here, the vision, this is your aspiration for where you want to be. So a vision doesn't say where you are right at this moment, but the strategic plan has a 5-year planning horizon. Where do you want to be in 2030? Well, a sustainable, innovative transportation system is what you all envision that empowers people with diverse and accessible options like we just saw to connect communities, unlock opportunities, and support regional growth and potential. So that's your mission and vision that reflect, here's why we do what we do, and here's our vision for where we want to be 5 years from now. That came out of the strategic plan process. Was there a question or no? Okay.
I was gonna, before you go.
Yeah.
Into the organizational assessment, I wanted to see, Doug, if you wanted to say anything about the strategic plan, and then I wanted to be sure, is there, will the organization be adopting this at a later meeting, or what's the?
That's great. Yes. So let's talk about process. The board is seeing disaggregated information and documents for the first time. I anticipate some opportunities for input and adjustment. Also, we have some regional partners and other folks that we work with regularly that may want to provide some input. For example, CPRC has already let us know that, that there are some adjustments around budgeting and fringe benefits that are contained in the org assessment that they, would like to have a further conversation about. So we will work on that. And then in October at the board meeting, we'll be presenting that final draft for adoption of both of these documents. So thank you.
Yeah, if there are any questions, because I'm going to go into the organizational assessment and the key findings there, and then we'll have it be an open conversation for questions. But if there are any about that first part, strategic plan, let me know. And also feel free as I go to ask questions. Thank you. So the organizational assessment, like I mentioned, the creation of the strategic plan is saying, what are the key focus areas for what we want to do as an organization? The organizational assessment is looking at how do we make that happen? What do we need to do? And so it was a similar process in terms of gaining the insights and the knowledge we need to do that. A staff survey. So through the staff survey and the staff interviews, that was every single staff member from Triangle West participated. It was about half and half in terms of whether they completed the survey or the interviews. The interviews were one-on-one with each staff member, going into detail about things like workload, capacities, things that are their highest priorities, and thinking about what potential improvements and opportunities there are around that. So that was the staff engagement, which was the first phase of it. Benchmarking research, it's listed as number 3, but really was going on throughout all of these sections of the process. That's looking at things like national studies from AMPO and other organizations, a couple of academic studies as well, and saying, what are the high MPO and TPOs doing, high performing and excelling MPOs and TPOs doing to create an effective organization that has the highest productivity? So that was the benchmarking research piece. And then the peer engagement, which really was focused on, first we did some research and identified who are Triangle West peers, both in North Carolina and beyond, did some research from what we could find, and then reached out to their staff and interviewed them. So it was people, some of them were similar to Doug's position, some of them were a deputy director. We also interviewed a couple people that were in kind of specialty areas, things like public engagement, which I'll get into in a moment. So that is the peer organization piece. So it was overall looking at engaging staff. What are the things that staff are saying? What are the things that peers are saying? And then the benchmarking research in between there. So what did staff say? What did we find as a result of doing this work? First, staff affirmed that this really is a collaborative work environment where they receive strong support both from leadership and from their colleagues. With an organizational assessment, it can often have the connotation of we're only looking for what's wrong or we're only looking to make improvements. It's highlighting what you all do very well. And at the staff level, staff feel very supported and they work in a really collaborative environment. So that was a key finding that came out of the engagement there. We did notice with these next 2 boxes here that workload is very heavy across the organization. And you see there with the different divisions, the way we define those for the purposes of the assessment was planning, modeling, and operations being the main 3 divisions of Triangle West. So workload is heavy across all 3 of those divisions. And particularly interesting was that nearly 40% of Triangle West staff have taken on new responsibilities or tasks this year. So that's on top of the work that they've already been doing with a relatively lean staff, taking on new work. Almost half of the staff are doing that. What else did staff say? They said that emphasize that more administrative support would relieve the heavier workloads that they do have. And so administrative support can range from things like bookkeeping, agenda, packet preparation, minutes recording, talent management process, which Doug and I have talked about quite a lot in terms of how to nurture employees and their growth. So staff members said that they're doing a lot of administrative work and that it's obviously important to do, but they want to be able to focus more on their core work if they're a planner or a modeler, for example. Another thing that we found is that there's a lack of sufficient role clarity in some cases, and that's created some coordination and productivity challenges across the organization's divisions. So as we'll get into in a moment with the peer organization research, you all are a little bit unique right now in the sense that there aren't quite as many position classifications for your staff. Most of staff are either a transportation planner or a modeler. And so what that can create is some good flexibility for staff to be taking on different types of roles and putting on the hats that they need to, but there can be a role clarity challenge there. And there's a recommendation in a moment that will address that.
Drew, could I?
Yeah.
Go back. I'd like to remark that I think that the 40% of the organization staff that's taking on new responsibilities is low. I'm going to suggest probably 100% of the organization staff have taken on new responsibilities and have both been encouraged and pushed to really perform at a high level, and I'm very appreciative of that. So I'm not certain you maybe got the most honest results from this. That's not a criticism. That's they are a very dynamic and engaged group.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And I think that they're also a group, like you say, that is rarely going to say no when they're asked to do something. And so a lot of the things that are new to them, they don't even realize because they're taking on so much. So that's what staff said. I'm not going to go through every box here on the peer organizations, but we worked through the research and through conversations with Doug to say, what are the 5 organizations that both in North Carolina and beyond that represent Triangle West's peers? Those would be obviously Campo. We felt it was important to interview them as they are a key partner to you all in this region. Wilmington Urban Area MPO. The main reason, as you see here with the selection reason column for why we engage them, is their focus on innovation. We actually didn't know this at the beginning, but Wilmington MPO did a very similar organizational assessment only 2 or 3 years ago. And so they had a lot of insights to share with us about things that came out of their organizational assessment.
Drew, I'll add, we actually did an organizational assessment for your neighbors, Campo.
Yeah, that's right. That was 2017, I believe it was. So those are obviously both North Carolina MPOs that we're very familiar with. The 3 outside of North Carolina that are your closest peers are the Nashville area MPO in Tennessee, Campo in Texas, so that's the Austin area. They go by the same capital area MPO terminology. And Miami-Dade TPO, I know what you're thinking, particularly looking at this population served. The Miami metro area is 2.7 million. You all are not quite there yet, although it might not be too long. The main reason that Miami-Dade was selected was for their public engagement practices and thinking about,
Oh, I'm sorry, what's LPA transition?
lead planning agency transition. So you all went from Durham to Central Pines, and then in their case, they also went through a similar transition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question, what do you mean by population served? Because the total population of Durham and Orange and Chatham is 500, and that's if you included all of Chatham County, is 576,000. Is it about people who drive through that area?
Exactly,
Not-
yeah. Mhm.
Not who lives there?
Yes, and it was important because, yeah, you all are, like a lot of MPOs in this area, it's not just the member agencies population, it's people coming in and out. So yeah, that's where that number comes from. So those are the peer organizations and the primary selection reasons for them. And what did we find from that peer engagement? So I'll go through each of these. What we found is that for all 5 of those organizations that we just saw, all of them employ dedicated staff for community engagement specialist and administrative specialist roles. Currently, Triangle West does not. So that stood out to us in terms of a staff capacity component that you all at the moment do not have in your staff. Secondly, the most comparable peer organization, which would be Campo, Texas, has nearly 25% more staff than Triangle West currently employs. And so Austin, when I talked with their deputy director, they're a fast growing region. They're not actually growing as fast as you all are. And that number, I believe, is actually higher because after my interview with that deputy director, he said, oh, by the way, there are 3 more positions that aren't reflected in the org chart that we just hired for. So that's the most comparable peer organization. They're employing currently more than you all have on your staff. What else did we find? All the peer organizations utilize tailored position classifications. I know that sounds kind of jargony, but basically what that means is more than just a transportation planner or a modeler. There's more differentiation of whether they're short range or long range planning, whether they're at the senior level or an entry level. And you'll see in the recommendations in a moment that we use that in this feedback to build out what we see in terms of what peer organizations are doing, having more tailored position classifications that describe those specific functions of staff members that addresses some of that role clarity issues. Lastly, we found that all of those peer organizations have either adopted a formal employee onboarding program or plan to in the future. You'll see in a moment why that's important, particularly with the recommendations that came out of this organizational assessment. So the main ones, the core recommendations are these organizational capacity. So hiring these 4 positions that you see here, community engagement specialist and administrative specialists that are meant to not only align with what your peers are doing and the positions that your peers have in place, but also what your members and what your staff say is important to have in terms of engaging with the community and making sure that as your administrative workload grows, that you all are able to keep up with that. The other 2 are hiring a transportation modeler and a transportation mobility manager. Those are more on the planning and modeling side of growing you all's capacity in both of those divisions. With the modeler, it's particularly important with the new express design requirement that Philman mentioned earlier. That creates additional work that was not in place before and did not need to be completed before, but does as a result of the P8 recommendations. And then transportation mobility manager is thinking about building out mobility throughout the region, particularly in different place types of the more suburban and rural areas of Triangle West service area. I will say, as Doug alluded to earlier, this recommendation does not say hire these positions right now, tomorrow. What it says is that all of these positions we feel in our analysis are needed to deliver on what the organization wants to achieve with the strategic plan, and that there's going to be some flexibility in when these positions would be hired, but the overall hope is within the next 3 years, I believe, is
by the completion of our strategic plan horizon.
Right. There you go. So those were the organizations.
When's the completion?
5 years.
5 years, yeah. So those were the organizational capacity, which are the main recommendations. There were a couple additional recommendations that we wanted to highlight as well. Developing those position classifications for planning and modeling teams. So this is what I alluded to earlier. You have staff that have different levels of experience and knowledge, but they may have the same title of transportation planner or transportation modeler. What we saw with the peer research and engagement is that they have those more tailored position descriptions and classifications that describe staff's functions a little more explicitly, and that it helps to address some of the role clarity confusion that we saw when it comes to staff in this organization. So things like a long-range planner rather than just a transportation planner, developing those types of position classifications. The second one Doug alluded to, evaluating employee fringe benefits. That's one that we received some feedback from our partners, Central Pines, about some clarifications that are going to be added into the full report. But basically, the goal there of evaluating employee fringe benefits is thinking about what does Triangle West need to do from the recruitment and retention side to be an employer of choice and not just be an organization that, okay, I like to work there, but an organization where I want to make my career here because the benefits are so strong. So not necessarily recommending anything concrete, but evaluating what those fringe benefits are and how the organization might be able to provide some of those. Last additional recommendation to highlight, like I alluded to earlier, is to establish a formal TPO-specific onboarding program. In two different ways, this is really important. First is in the national benchmarking research that we did. Onboarding new employees, for the most part, historically with MPOs and TPOs, didn't really care about it in past decades. They didn't really see it as a priority until staff from across the nation said, it would have really been helpful for me if I knew what I was really supposed to do when I came in the door as a new hire. And so combined with that national research that shows how important onboarding programs can be to improve productivity, we also heard from staff that they were able, of course, to find their way when they started at the MPO at the time, now TPO, but that establishing that formal TPO-specific onboarding program is going to help not only to integrate employees when they're new, but to keep them around because they really understand what the organization does, how it connects to the values and mission and vision that we went over earlier. And so what often happens with the lead planning agency is staff will do a very high level orientation from the lead planning agency, but they don't get oriented to specifically what the MPO or TPO does. And that's really critical because a lot of transportation planning organizations are unique in exactly what they do and exactly what their emphasis areas are. So that's why that came forward as an additional recommendation for consideration. And so, as Doug mentioned, process-wise, it will come back, both the strategic plan and organizational assessment recommendations will come back next month for adoption. So we're seeking feedback and comments or questions from anyone, but I'll turn it over to Bo.
But before I do that, I want to just acknowledge the work that Drew has put into this. You're saying the two of us here? Yeah, thank you. It was awesome. We're seeing the two of us here. There's actually a tremendous team at Fountain Works that worked on this. In fact, we even brought in outside experts on a contractual basis to help us with some of the peer review work. And so Drew, as a project manager, not only did all the work that you saw there today and did a great presentation, he managed all those disparate pieces to pull it together. And the other thing I wanted to mention is how much fun we had working with your staff, with the gathering of your team, and then the strategic plan that we had a chance to work with you on. So we want to thank you for the opportunity to do all that. Again, thank you, Doug, for your leadership on that. Before we jump into the questions and check in with you, first on time, and then most importantly, is there anything you wanted to add to that before we jump into any questions that folks might have?
No, I don't have anything to add other than thank you. Thanks to the board, the TC, which a couple of members are here, and of course the staff. And I hope that everybody who provided input feels that it was accepted and included, as part of the process. So thank you. As far as time goes, we're at 11:05. We do have some quick report outs and then an executive session, closed session after. We need to vacate probably in about 40 minutes. So we're running a little, it can go a little bit longer to noon, but we've got to vacate and reset this room for the next users.
So does that mean that we have maybe 2 questions or something like that? Or
2 or 3 or how, and then follow.
I don't want to, you've got back end important things to do. I just want to be sure. All right, so Wendy had her hand up first, then Carl, and then.
Yeah, I just
Melissa had her
also
up too,
want
yeah.
And then
say,
we have 4 questions.
There's like 4, right?
Five, that's, we'll get through them later.
I'll be quick, just want to say thank you, this is great. I don't know what you were thinking about next steps, but obviously this should be brought back for more in-depth conversation at maybe our next meeting. And really allocate a lot, a good hour for us to talk about what's the recommendations and the plan. Related to the new positions, I just wondered, did you think about how to prioritize those positions? Because I mean, at the county level, when we have requests for new positions, we always say, well, which is, first, second, third priority, because, it may not be financially. Is this the order of recommendation?
No, and I asked your staff and Doug specifically about whether we wanted to prioritize these, and Doug can probably speak to it better than I can, but the idea was to have flexibility, like you say, when it comes to being able to hire the particular position. But Doug, I know we talked about that last week, and I think you can probably add on to that.
I think the first priority is going to be the modeler, because, and it goes into the modeling unit instead of the planning, because it's very technical and specific. It's basically somebody who takes the outputs of the regional model and does the more finite and granular local traffic assessment that NCDOT is going to be requiring in future spot submissions. Additionally, we've had requests over the past few months from both Hillsborough and Carrboro to, hey, we're looking at traffic. Do you have any idea how to analyze this? And we don't have that capacity on staff. It would have been helpful during the one-way fare conversion discussions for us to be able to support that information and fact find. And I think that with our current funding level, that we can hire that on without an additional impact to the current year. So to hire that, we would not come back and ask for additional money for this fiscal year.
Okay, so in the interest of time, you don't have to go into detail now, but I think what would be helpful to bring back to us is, some analysis of these positions and what would it look like to phase them in, and over time, and what would be the priorities and why. And again, that's what we have to do when we're budgeting every year. Things are prioritized, and, there's a rationale. So I think that would be very helpful to us as we look at this.
Just a quick question, because I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around this book now and in the future. Would the board be interested in having it all scheduled where we can virtually discuss it and I can get input between now and the next meeting?
Discussing
That would be good, because I have a lot of feedback and
Yeah.
I could read through it very quickly, but I think that it's important for us, if we have feedback, to give it now so that it can be integrated before it comes back.
Yeah, a call would be good.
Yeah.
Call about the whole assessment.
Right, that we, can additionally, we can dig in a little deeper.
Well, the assessment or the strategic
The strategic
plan?
plan.
Both.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, both.
mine are on the strategic plan.
Yeah.
Well, let's go through things now, but then I'll schedule a 60 to 90-minute call in our midweek between now and then. Get that feedback and maybe go into a little bit more depth.
So you do want to raise issues now?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, first of all, thanks for doing this. Thanks for Fountain Works. I think it's good that we just got to link the strategic plan with the organizational assessment. And I think I appreciate those comments. We are a growing region. We want this TPO to be a world-class TPO, right? So all the things you're talking about in terms of additional staff capacity, I think as we think about the plan going forward, are really critical things to note. I would just note, and on the organizational assessment, I'm looking at the purpose of this was to identify resources, personnel, practices, and efforts the organization will need in order to achieve the goals articulated. I think that's an important part of an assessment. What seems to me to be missing here is actually an honest assessment of the organization, right? Almost like a SWOT kind of thing, because that's not really here. We're talking about what's needed in the future, but I think some assessment of our effectiveness now and what's needed to be effective in the future would also be an important part of any organizational assessment. So that's a piece for me that's missing. I want to note. Because it all goes toward like what we need in the future is great, but it's not saying like, how are we doing and how does what we're doing now, or what we need, how do we sort of link what we're doing now and how effective we are to what we need to be doing in the future?
Well, we don't just want to compare based on there are straightforward metrics like population, but then, we're getting into, there's still a base level of requirements that we have to do regardless of whether we are at the level we are, whether we're at the level that the Raleigh NPO is at, so.
And I'm thinking more of an assessment is kind of like you and your staff, how effective you feel like you're doing, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the staff in our organization, in addition to what we need to do going forward, but just an honest assessment of kind of a SWOT thing,
I'm willing to guess that the survey that Fountainworks completed with the staff has a lot of that information in it.
I was gonna say, while there is not a specific SWOT analysis currently, we have more than enough information to put that together to pull that out for you.
Because it's not always on a day, right? Like
that's right. Yeah.
That'd be helpful to pull out that.
Yeah.
It could be a snapshot of probably not as scientific as it probably should be, but we could give you something.
We absolutely can do that.
Because we don't want to continue, if there are things we're doing that are not super effective, we don't want to continue that. We want to sort of like address that and also get better as we are growing and improving.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so there and then.
Okay, so just a couple of quick questions. I think Amy, you were next.
No, I
Okay.
just don't like.
Maybe Melissa.
Four times every
Sorry. So just a couple questions. First, thank you for the strategy, the strategic planning session, the summary, and the organizational assessment, and putting together a mission vision that we can all talk about. Appreciate the thoroughness of the work. I do have a couple of questions, and these may be the ones that come into our follow-on discussion. But noticing that, both in the assessment, workload is very heavy, and then Doug, you echoed that and said it's not only 40%, but 100%. More new responsibilities are coming into 100% of our team. It would be helpful and informative to understand what's driving that. And again, we can take that as an offline discussion, but what is contributing to that change? And is that comparative with other TPOs? And then secondly, as we think about that, and I appreciated, Drew, your comment about, as we're looking at the recommendation set, the four big ones, I really appreciated Wendy's comments about prioritizing those, and wondering, as we look at productivity opportunities, establishing the onboarding program, the position classifications from, planning and modeling, how much those may help us with addressing some of that incoming load. So just, very interested in having those conversations as we think about the needs of the TPO as we go forward.
Okay. These are going back to the strategic plans, and I just want to get them on your radar before we talk about them at more length. First off, I love the framework. This is just details. I would like to see us recast our values as opposed to just sustainability. I think that given that sustainability is actually environment, economy, and social issues, I think it's important for us, especially in this time of people's hatred, Republicans' hatred of all things environment, that we could say environmental sustainability, but then cast economic prosperity as economic prosperity and sustainability. So they start associating that word as being very future oriented. And
So broadening sustainability beyond just the environmental content. Okay.
Exactly. Going back to the SFA number one, the maintenance issues, I think that it'd be helpful to have this include helping define and predict the maintenance costs of projects that are proposed, so that as we evaluate costs of projects, that we can start educating people about, this is not just money that we're putting on the ground. This is money that we are committing to every 10 years for the life of this project. And we need to start thinking in a very long-term cost way. And if this is the first place people look for what's going on in the TPO, I want them to see that. This is an opportunity for us to educate people about nuances of what's going on. On SFA number 2, doing the regular work, I would love to see this include a Gantt chart kind of a thing of everything that's going on at the same time. It would help me certainly to visualize how that goes, but it also would convey to the public how we're balancing a 10-year, a 20-year, a fiscally constrained, a not fiscally constrained kind of a thing. On SFA number 3, building relationships with contractors, or collaboration with partners and contractors. This would be a great opportunity to approach. One of the problems with the General Assembly is that the contractors want to do the same thing they've been doing, and they tell that to the contractors. I'd like for us to be able to both find new contractors and to educate old contractors about the opportunities that there are in working in bike ped and transit infrastructure. So they're not constantly lobbying against it, which goes to the legislative dialogue SFA, which I would love for us not just to talk with these, legislative stakeholders in the public, but to integrate legislative staff and lobbyists. They're a good source of information and expertise, and they're also a good source of educating them about enough issues that they can catch the ones and we can communicate the ones that might get the attention to help overcome assumptions on the part of legislators and staff. To SFA number 6, given the animosity towards climate, anything related to climate, I would, we need to talk about resilient economies as well in terms of natural disasters, but I might take out climate adaptation measures and talk about the measures to prepare for and bounce forward from more and more frequent extreme weather events. So that goes to the heart of the issue and not, I don't believe in climate change. I definitely believe storms are bad and getting worse. And then to metrics to illustrate success. The ability to measure and compare LOS is sometimes a project will come in and it's like, it doesn't change the LOS at all. Why are we spending this money? It'd be good to see some attention to, and maybe this is for the work plan, how much money is it costing per time saved per capita? How much money in terms of are these long-term improvements that we're evaluating, taking induced demand into account. So it'll look out 5 years at the benefits of level of service, but doesn't look out 10, 15, 20 years when induced demand has kicked in. And I would love to see something that is comparing the money spent to the vehicle miles traveled to emission reductions. And that might actually could be tied to level of service as well. How much emission reductions gains are we getting for level of service reductions in terms of, again, induced demand? There's just so many pieces that are working together. And I would like to have people understand that when they're spending this kind of money, it's only saving, everybody, 15 or 20 seconds at rush hour. But yet they're also getting more emissions, more yada, yada. For emissions, we don't have to even go to carbon equivalents. We can look at conventional pollution as indicators of climate gases. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Doug, I think there's a lot of input, but we'll probably need to talk about the process to make sure we capture all of these.
Sure.
Yeah, just very quickly about process. I remember, Doug, you had sent an email saying, give us your input. But I think this kind of input, I plead guilty. I didn't respond, but I think this kind of conversation is really what's most helpful. And I'm even wondering, what is the rush to adopt it? Could we have this discussion in person at the next meeting and then adopt it at a later meeting?
We can have multiple discussions and adopt it at any meeting in the future, if the board would like. more time, I think that that may be helpful. So I was just, I don't know when Fountain Works agreement ends, so we may be editing some of those internally. Or we may need to look at extending their agreement and the terms to compensate for that additional time, which I don't think will be an issue.
Everybody.
But no, there's not a.
And Doug, I'll add to that, what you're saying, just if thinking about the organizational assessment and the strategic plan, they're obviously very well linked. But starting to think about actions to implement some recommendations for the organizational assessment might be something you want to start moving that process forward sooner rather than later, just because of the timeframes and the ability to meet goals and attain things. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate a lot of what Council McCullough said, and I appreciate the detail in it. I do notice that you didn't really mention it today, but the last page was metrics to illustrate success, and they seem to be very high level outcomes related, like pollution emissions. And so it's great that we have all those because we want to know that we are making a difference at the high level, but clearly you also need action steps as part of that, and even process steps. Like you said, partner was one of the three main emphasis, but on this page, there's nothing about how many partnerships were, maintained or developed or in what way. So who is going to create those action items as part of a strategic plan? Because if the strategic plan doesn't have that, it's sort of just a pie in the sky goal.
We chose, responsibly, I pulled these metrics out because in my experience here, they are what, particularly around the transportation planning work, we had viewed as sort of what we're looking for. So whether it's carbon or whether it's other measures, these are things that I believe we can get reliable data fairly efficiently to present to the board as things come through. There certainly could be something like partnerships.
Yeah.
Then I would want to talk with you all about how to measure that.
Yeah.
Because that's a very subjective.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just one, I'm just saying, like, these are outcomes and you also need sort of process measures too, which really gets at the point of you're wanting to make organizational change and hiring changes. And, I think you need both kinds of measures. And then my final one was sort of a question on some of these, like the community engagement specialist and the admin for onboarding, like who is currently doing those? I think that would be helpful information. And I thought we received a presentation about community engagement a few months ago. And was that just not that person's job, or did we hire a consultant for that?
We spread everything across everyone.
Which is not a bad idea, but I mean, I realize you needing somebody to take responsibility for it.
Well,
that's part of organizational charts too. With your action item, you need who's doing it. So
yeah, I'd say less responsibility, more consistency. We have a brand standard that we're advancing. We have specific things we want to advance. We're going to have values and focus areas out of the strategic plan that we want to advance. And I think having a component of the team that can make sure that that is in everything and is also formally educated and experienced in that, where planners are awesome. We want to think, I'll say I'm a planner, we want to think we can do everything. Entering invoices into our finance system, accounts payable and accounts receivable and consistency and those sorts of things have been very stressful, forever, not just here, but when we were at Durham too. And at Durham, we did have some ability to lean on the transportation department's admin folks. They are as equally professional and important as any planner we have to do that and to make the planning more efficient. To have someone else that can focus on those other things would be very valuable. Allowing Tom to be more of a planner and less of a UPWP compiler. I'm glad he understands the process, but he's not an accountant. He's a public policy person, and it just doesn't always fit very well. So I really appreciate that, and I think we can talk about how those align and how to move things more into alignment as we explore some of the recommendations, and will also in a very clear way how to communicate, maybe not in a data way, but communicate the progress that we make towards achieving those outcomes.
I'm sure I know that you have closed session that you need to check with you on.
We are getting tight. So if we can continue this discussion, we'll plan either phone call and additional meeting.
I mean, getting this right is more important than the time. You know, so if I didn't want to, I'm sorry, I came across as trying to rush. It's not the case.
No, it's excellent work.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, Drew, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
And we will move right into reports from previous staff. Doug?
I just want to call out some of the things that we've been working on that the staff's particularly excited. I mentioned the coordinating spot. The modeling team has completed the 2035 public transportation networking in the system. Colleen has worked with the high capacity transit study in Chapel Hill, which has really hit the ground running and been a good process. And lastly, Casey and Tom and other staff on our team have helped prepare us for the fiscal year 25 audit. So we are providing information, documentation. We've actually discovered a couple of very minor items that we missed reimbursement for. So we'll be going back and filing the appropriate documentation with NCDOT to be reimbursed for that. So I'd really like to commend all the staff. And one staff person was also particularly excited because they were having vacation. And, you know, we are human and we get excited about that too. So, that's all I have today.
Okay. No report from the board chair. We will move right into DOT reports. Lisa Mathis, are you online?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I will be brief. We had a wonderful transportation summit at the beginning of the month. We had nearly 1,100 participants and local leaders take part in the event to learn together about our growing and ever-changing industry. Thank you so much if you were able to come. If you were not, we've got all of the sessions are online that you can really enjoy at your leisure, and I highly recommend them. Last month, we were hit by Hurricane Erin. She did not make landfall, but she did force mandatory evacuations and did a lot of damage. And there was, again, flooding on Highway 12. She's a good reminder that we're all still in hurricane season, and we've got Ready North Carolina, readync.gov and drivenc.gov if you are ever concerned about road conditions across the state. We've also got, of course, we all completely understand that Hurricane Helene is our big anniversary is coming up in a few days. It will be the 1 year since all of that happened, but we've got an event that's going to be taking place on the 26th out on I-40. On the positive note, early last month, Asheville Intercity bus service relaunched. So we're beginning daily pickups outside that area. So that's going to be a really wonderful way to restore some more vital connections to cities like Charlotte, Raleigh, and Greensboro. We've got all kinds of media tours that have been going on in Yancey County, Bat Cave, Chimney Rock, etc., in preparation of the milestone. We certainly hope that you can join us or make sure that you see some of our broadcasts that we'll have out on September 26th. We are quickly going on into DMV news. We're excited to announce we've got another 40 new driver's license or examiners out there. So we're hoping to help reduce those lines in some of the affected areas across the state. And last but not least, we've got some exciting news that we've got a new secretary that will be coming on board on October 1st. We really appreciate the more than 30 years that Secretary Hopkins has graced us with his presence, and we're very excited. We were so grateful that he stayed on through the recovery, and we will happily let him enjoy his retirement now that he stayed an extra 9 months to help us get through this time. Our new secretary is going to be he is our current general counsel at DOT, Daniel Johnson. We're very excited to have him on. He's worked in private practice. He was an assistant DA in Wake County. He was a surface warfare officer in the U.S. Navy. He is a Navy and Marine Corps Medal recipient, which is the highest non-combat decoration award for heroism. He's a native of Hickory. He's an absolutely wonderful man. He's a double UNC grad. He's also had his law degree there. We're very, very excited to have him. I know that the governor is very, very pleased to have somebody with such a record of public service leadership and expertise in transportation. We're very excited to have him, and we all look forward to working with him for a safer, stronger, and better connected North Carolina. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Next, Becca Gallus or someone from Division 5.
No report.
Wright Archer, Division 7.
Chair Rakowski, nothing additional to report today.
Thank you. Ruben Blakely or someone from Division 8.
Ryan Kluchar, no changes to the update. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Vogel.
Good morning, this is Julie. I have one quick update. So the Traffic Survey Group has published the 2024 Annual Average Daily Traffic, or AADT, counts as of September 2nd. And there's 3 resources in which you can view the data, and it's listed in a publication notice with links to the resources. So I'll share that with you through email. And then the Go NC maps, a place where I look for these is still being worked on, but there are shape files that are available for download from the Traffic Survey Group website at this time. And I will update you when the Go NC maps are updated with the counts. And that's it. Thank you.
John Grant, Traffic Operations.
Looks like he's not online.
No, okay. And then someone from Integrated Mobility.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll go ahead and receive the reports from DOT. There are some attached articles and updates, and is there a motion to go into closed session? Second?
The small executive boardroom is reserved to give you guys all the time you need. If I'll take you over there and then I'll come back and help the team reset this room. Okay.
It's not right. We get to figure it out. Yeah. Right.
My wife has been telling me that.
Yeah.
It's time. I have to stand up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Constant fear.
Not jealous. Yes. What is your early voting?
The interlocal agreement. Yeah. Thursday.
Okay, I'm like thinking about this.
Yeah, I'm switching gears. Yeah.
Okay.
They're always scared. I'm like, I have that.
Got it. Good idea.